Hello and welcome to the How of High Performance. And today I am beyond thrilled to have a fantastic guest in Claire Hollands, who is CEO of Saatchi and Saatchi. Claire, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Sally. It's an absolute pleasure to get this opportunity to chat.
Oh, well, Claire, this talk is all about high performance, but very much in the context of when the stakes are high. So the first question I'd love to ask you is, can you just give us a short overview of your career to date so people can understand where your insight and experience is coming from?
Yes. So I actually started off, I don't know if career is the right word, but I started by going to med school, which a lot of people wouldn't know about me, and got into med school and thought, actually, I just don't know if this is what I want. And it was a really good lesson early on, I think, in my life about finding something you love. And really going after it. So I then did a geography degree, and during that time realised I didn't want to do often the normal thing to do with a geography degree. So I went and worked at Cogents, which at the time was a big Birmingham agency that did all of the Jaguar Land Rover work. And that kind of gave me the bug. And so I then did various work placements at wonderful places such as Publicis and Lear Burnett, M&C, and basically sofa surfed my way to a job at Leo's. And then the rest sort of went from there. So I did a couple of years at Leo's, and then I did a huge stint at AMV, where I was their head of department and ended up being their chief client officer. And then I went from there to Mullen Lowe, where I was MD and became CEO. And then I've just most recently stepped into the CE role at Saatchi. So I'm nearly 4 months in here at Saatchi.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Gosh, I bet you've had so much learning and stories from all of that time.
Indeed. And 2 kids along the way as well, which I should probably have inserted in there in some shape or form. But I wear multiple hats.
Oh, absolutely. One thing I'm always fascinated, I'm privileged to speak to senior leaders like yourself. I think we can make an assumption that high stakes means the same thing for everybody, which obviously it really doesn't. So I'm always keen to ask you a very straightforward question. In layman's language, how would you simply define, Claire, what high stakes means?
Well, I'm interested to see how other people answer this. But for me, high stake, we're a talent business. And so for me, high stakes is very simple in that the minute something is going to have an impact on my people in a negative way, that is what I would call high stakes. So I think lots of people might come at it from a commercial angle, whereas actually I come at it from a people talent angle.
Interesting. It's interesting to me there's an association instantly with a negative around high stakes there.
Oh yes, that is interesting as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
okay.
Because for me, I look at it through the angle of opportunity.
Okay.
High stakes means there's really exciting things that matter that can be brought to life that aren't business as usual.
And maybe that's just because of the environments I've been in of late. Maybe that's made me go, what is high stakes? So I love flipping it to being about opportunity and growth. And actually, funnily enough, some of my answers do come on and talk a bit more about that, actually.
Yeah, but you're not the first who has gone for that. There's a risk or a threat with the
I think it's because maybe it's where our industry is a little bit at the moment, but I think I think lots of agency leaders would say it is a challenging marketplace. And so I think a lot of what we're doing is identifying growth and opportunity and how we future protect ourselves or future grow. But I do think there is also a reality that a lot of us are staring into in terms of actually how we drive a transformation agenda within agencies in order to do that.
I couldn't agree more. And also the voices I'm hearing as well concur.
Yeah.
So given all that rich experience you've kindly just given us a top line around, is there one specific moment, could be currently, could be from previously in your career, that really stands out for you as that high stakes moment for your leadership? And can you break it down to how you approached it to conquer it?
I mean, I think in that context, probably the most pertinent one is actually when I merged 3 agencies together when I was at Mullen Lowe. And that was very much done with a opportunity and a growth lens, which was we had effectively 3 agencies. We had a digital agency, a purpose and sustainability consultancy, and an advertising agency. And together, they were more like the sum of the collective parts was more powerful and more potent in front of clients than when we use those individual identities. So we did a merger where we smashed all of them together. But I think from a leadership point of view, those individual agencies inevitably had strong cultural tribes.
Mm.
So actually a huge part of it was, this is the right thing to do to service our clients, and this is definitely the right thing to do from a commercial point of view. But actually, back to we're a talent business, actually the biggest part of the leadership job wasn't actually the sort of the coming together of the finances. It was actually about, how do you bring three cultures together under one roof in a way that everybody wants to be part of that next chapter and part of that future vision. And I think that was really exciting in lots of ways, but there was also lots of challenges about, what do you do about the people that aren't too sure if that future is for them, and how you manage that. So I think that's probably one of the things I've actually enjoyed most in my leadership of agencies, actually, is not around so much clients and the day-to-day business. It's more like, how do you shape out a future agency vision and shape, and then bring a whole load of different people along with you on that journey.
And could you share maybe 3 key steps you took? I know I'm asking you to simplify what was a very complex piece of work, but if we're trying to get those steps and the practical approach, Claire, that you as the leader of that merge and the culture change, getting that sense of buy-in, just those practical steps that you put in place to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, I think one was actually, funnily enough, is getting a real understanding of where everybody was at the time. Because I think if you've really understood the audience, you can tailor a plan that much better is going to then listen to their fears or their opportunities or whatever. So I think I started with really quite a big listening exercise, so that we could try and lean into what was it actually that our people wanted or didn't want. And then I think that helped shape our narrative and our plan quite clearly. I think the other thing people want at a time of a lot of change is leadership. So I think we got really clear, we had 3 leadership teams. We got really clear about who was the new future leadership team, what that meant for certain individuals that had been on existing leadership teams, and therefore, as a result, like what the direction of travel was, if that makes sense. And then I think it's setting a North Star that you think everybody can get behind, and it's got to be relevant to all of what the agency's remits were. It would have been really easy to take the most dominant agency and base the North Star around that, and then actually you lose the other 2 groups. So when we were defining the new positioning and the new strategy, we were very mindful to make sure that everybody had a clear role within that direction of travel, if that makes sense. And then I think the last thing I'd say is we also were very honest in that it was to be built. It wasn't that we were coming to the table with all the answers. I think part of the joy of building something new is doing it with people. So we really tried a kind of a ground up approach where we set a clear vision and a North Star, but we were clear that we wanted to build where we got to with people. Nice. And we did that in quite a sort of structured way, if that makes sense, in terms of bringing new groups of people together from across the agencies to build out new functions or client services or capabilities in quite an interesting way.
And just very quickly, because my interest is peaking so much, I know we've got other questions, but now we've got the benefit of hindsight having done that. Is there anything you do differently?
I think the bit that is always hard is, I would say that there was about, and I'm making the numbers up, but about a third of people that wanted change and were all in. There was about a third of people that were like, I don't know about this, but I kind of am interested enough to see what's going to happen. And then there was about a third of people that were like, this is all a lot of change and I don't know if I'm in the boat. And in truth, that third, that bottom third, you want to move everybody up into being active advocates. And I don't think we worked hard enough at the middle layer to get them up into active advocacy.
Gotcha.
And some of the detractors, I think in truth, we should have made decisions about earlier, because I think they slowed the change agenda and they created some cultural issues in truth, which I think, culture as you put 3 agencies together is kind of disproportionately important. So actually, if I had my time again, I think the one thing I would have done is probably lent harder into that middle tier to go, how do I get them in the boat?
Nice.
And I might have been harder on the bottom tier to go, you're in or you're out, basically.
Thank you. I just felt there was a nice little build there, and you gave it to me, so thank you very much. And what about your life, Claire? Because I'm always very passionate that people are not just a job title, and I'm actually not an advocate of bring your whole self to work. I think it's nice to have different parts of you for different parts of your life. If we're looking at when you've navigated high stakes personally, is there a situation you've navigated as Claire, not CEO, that you'd be happy to share with us? And what did you draw on to help you overcome or realise those high stakes? Because as I said, it's not always negative; it can also be positive.
Do you know what? This was a huge positive for me, but I think it did take a lot of courage, I guess would be maybe the word I would use. And it's actually about the time that I moved from AMV to Mullen Lowe. And I say it from a personal point of view rather than a sort of a work point of view, because actually the context to that was I'd been at AMV for 14 years and had wanted to make a move, but it was also COVID and I was pregnant. So and that is like a double whammy, I think, of kind of leaving an agency with an ambition to go and do something different, but then COVID hitting and being pregnant with number two, it just suddenly your world changes. So actually, when I took the job at Mullen Lowe, I not only had become a mum of two, but actually I hadn't stepped into an office for nearly 2 years.
Gosh,
and I was going into a new agency in a new role. And to be honest, not knowing, having been somewhere for so long, if I was going to cut it, so to speak. So I think that first week that I stepped in that agency, to this day, nobody would know in truth the sort of unhealthy paranoia, I guess I would describe it as to what, how was this going to work? Could I cut it? What would people think of me? Was I going to manage this new job with two really, really small kids?
Yeah.
And so I think that was a high stakes moment for me, because in truth, I really put myself out there, and only good things happened off the back of that. But it was a really daunting moment where I think I just had to sort of back myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
and I think I learned two things in that moment. One is I'd moved because of a group of people that I met and I had loved. And I think that paid back. And I think it reminded me of always find people you want to work with, because when the shit hits the fan, that's actually what matters the most. And then I think I also learned in a really good way that we've all learned like a playbook through our career that you can apply to different problems and scenarios. But I also had that realization of my playbook only goes so far and this task is much greater. And I think one of the things I loved about that chapter of my career was finding the other people around me that knew those chapters that I didn't have, and then building something new with them. So that sense of not feeling like you have to do it all on your own, but finding the right people to do it with, I think became a really pertinent part of my chapter at Mullen Lowe, in truth.
And was there anything you can remember? It might feel a long time ago now, given everything else you've been working with, but anything you remember around how you self-managed to that high stakes, because I think we forget at our peril just how different COVID times were, especially if you've had that personal change of becoming a mum of two and just managing that reality in COVID. How your own self kind of talked, what you did in yourself that helped you manage that situation.
Yeah, I think a couple of things happened. One is I think I'd already had number one and learned the hard way about trying to manage work-life balance. And in truth, learning that I think even in the most supportive work environments, of which I've been very blessed to work in a few of them, ultimately you have to set your own boundaries, because actually only you can look after you at the end of the day. So I think I learned a lot with number one about how to set boundaries that served me really well going into a new job. And then I think the other thing is COVID did pivot working from home.
Yes.
And so I think in truth, I really benefited from having a hybrid role like I still do now, that just allows that little bit of flex around the edges to go, on a Friday I work from home, and that's just the day that I can just not be out of the house for literally 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I think a combination of those two things has meant that I'm very ruthless with my time, which I'm sure is what a lot of working parents would say. But I've also learned when I need to be all in at work, and also when I need to be all in at home. And I know that when those things get too out of kilter, I think I've learned quite well about when to reset, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. So if we look at your leadership lessons, obviously we've only touched like a minute portion of it right now, but your life lessons, are there key lessons that you can just summarize, practical steps, techniques that you've learned through getting it right, getting it wrong, and all the way in between, that you would say, right, these are the lessons that have stayed with you from navigating high stakes situations that you can share with others.
Yeah. I think what people, and this is, by the way, whether it's a positive or a negative, I think what people want, which often isn't really maybe talked about enough, is people just want leadership in those moments. Like, I think leadership is like the number one thing that needs to happen at a moment of high stakes. And that can be in a way that it could be that people are setting the vision and the dream and the ambition and getting everybody really like rallied up to go and say run at a big pitch. Or it can be actually in a moment of crisis where people are looking for reassurance or clarity. And how you respond in those moments, I think, is disproportionately impactful. And I think making a move quickly at a moment of high stakes, regardless whether it's a positive or a negative, but setting out your leadership stall, I think is really, really important, because I think it sets a tone for then how the whole of the rest of that change narrative will happen. I think I touched on it earlier, but I think everybody needs to feel like there is a plan. I do think you need to set out a quick roadmap. But back to you don't need all the answers. I think it's actually quite disarming in a positive way to say, look, I don't have all the answers. This is a new plan, or there's new information coming, but this is how I want to tackle it, and we're gonna evolve that as we go with the information we get, or depending on where we get to. I think that's quite a nice kind of thing, because then I think people feel like they're also building with you, and they can input and change the plan with you, rather than it being a sort of a just do it kind of mandate. And then I think getting your leadership team really tight, again, back to it not sitting on one person's shoulders. I think being really clear about who is the people that are accountable around that top table is important. And then I think that listening exercise can't be underestimated. So as you go, whatever that change agenda or that high stakes thing is it's keeping listening to the ground to pivot what it is you might need to do or say, if that makes sense. So, and I think that last bit is disproportionately important, because that's where you'll pick up whether a team are engaged or finding it difficult, or whether or not you've got people that think their job is at risk. Like that listening exercise, and actually making sure you do that all the way through, I think is part of the power of really strong leadership operating at a high stakes moment.
Right. It can be the quickest one to get dropped, because it takes time and energy and patience, doesn't it?
And you get so focused on the where you want to go, or the challenge right in front of you, that I think it's really easy to forget the only way we're going to deliver that is if everybody gets in the boat with us. And to do that, I need to make sure that my EQ and my listening as part of that are really live. Because we've all been there, where you've got a big, I don't know, project or something to run, and you realise morale is really low. That's part of that listening exercise, because you might need to have a moment where you go, I recognise this is really tough, but look what we've achieved, and we're nearly there, kind of thing. Or, you know, maybe we need to bring in some new energy to actually help build the team that are already there. So I think that last bit about how you, particularly if high stakes things are going on for a while, you know, if you're talking about 6-month change agenda, I think thinking about how you manage not only your own, but actually your whole team's energy levels along that roadmap is really important.
100%. So if we were to give you the impossible question to answer, which is if you could give just one nugget of advice, Claire, if someone you know is navigating a high stakes, positive or negative, but a high stakes situation, they're the C-suite leader, they're the one who's going to take the business, the team through to a positive outcome. What would that one practical, kind of in terms of how you're leading, one practical nugget you would say, if I had to only give one, it's this?
I think I would say you get the best out of people when they know what is expected of them and what the stakes are. And I think actually just being really honest and open and treating people with respect along a process as if they are equals to you is really, really important. Because sometimes these high stakes situations arise, and I don't think everybody actually even knows what's at stake.
True. Yeah, true.
I know it sounds really basic, but it's like, is everybody in this room really clear on what the opportunity is or what the risk is,
100%.
because so often we don't even share that level of clarity. So that's always sort of where I start, if that makes sense, because I think that's where the trust gets built.
I think that's the word, like just at the end of our conversation, that word there, trust.
Yeah.
That's your glue, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the superpower that makes the impossible possible.
Yes, because then when you ask people for the extra thing, when they trust you, they'll do it, is the truth. And also, I think when the trust is gone, that's when all the kind of the dynamics of a high performing team fall away.
Yeah.
So I think even if there's difficult news to deliver, doing it in a way where you just put the stakes on the table and go, look, these are the 3 scenarios and this one is particularly difficult. I think that leads to a way better conversation than if you just, go in and try and gloss over what maybe the real elephant in the room is, in truth.
And that takes a great trust of yourself as a leader.
Yes. Yeah, and trust of those
Yeah,
around
yeah,
you, because you are also trusting them with either sensitive information or competitive information. And so, I do think you have to therefore entrust in your team and tell them that you're doing that, actually.
Oh, Claire, we're just peeling off the layers. We're just peeling off the layers, but you've given us some really great, practical, insightful anchors of wisdom. So thank you. I knew you would. So thank you so much for coming on and talking about the how of high performance.
Great, thank you. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm also really looking forward to seeing what other people say, so that I can broaden my leadership skills in terms of how you deal in high stakes moments.
Thank you.